Today we have a very special video to talk about. It is a crazy deep dive into the financials of the LEC that was done by Sheep Esports ourselves. Very, very crazy stuff here from Dimey. Really interesting video, really interesting topic that has definitely blown up and done quite well and got a lot of attention, and something I was really excited to talk about. The LEC, according to Sheep Esports here on Twitter, has recorded a deficit of 28.5 million euros, up 155% in 2023, and the league sits at $53 million in cumulative losses, though Riot Games made $1.55 billion that same year. And then obviously this article is, like I said, a deep dive into the cost of esports and the LEC at Riot Games. So obviously, right off the bat, doesn't necessarily sound like things are going all that great for the LEC. I know some people try to say, hey, that esports is marketing expense or blah, 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 but also at the end of the day, if you're losing that much money, it might become an issue at some point. I don't know. We'll have to see what this article has to say, but here it is. 53 million euros in the red, Riot Games, and the cost of the LEC. Since 2022, the LEC has found itself under increasing economic pressure. So until now, relatively little financial data about the internal operations of Riot Games and its subsidiaries, especially the LEC, Riot's European LOL Esports League, have been made public. But today, Sheep Esports delivers a first-of-its-kind analysis of the company's financial results, examining Riot's parent company, Tencent, and the increasingly popular LEC via Riot Games EU. This analysis centers on one question: is the LEC financially sustainable, or has it become a burden on Riot's accounts? Tencent, which is, kind of the owner and operator of all this stuff, has become one of the biggest players, if not the biggest, in the video game space. On top of owning the publisher of League of Legends and Valorant, the group backs the ownership of other major in-house studios, including Teamy Studio Group, Lightspeed, and Quantum Studios, and Supercell, the studios behind titles like Honor of Kings, PUBG, Mobile, and Clash of Clans. In total, Tencent's impressive gaming division generated an eye-watering $92 billion in 2024 alone. So 1.55 billion euros in sales. With the Tencent empire, Riot Games has established itself as the operational and financial center of Riot for markets outside of the United States. It's responsible for sales support, marketing, and localization of the publisher's games in Europe, the Middle East, Asia, and Latin America. The subsidiary centralizes non-US revenues, 1.55 billion in 2023, bears strategic costs, R&D in esports, and returns profit to its parent company Riot via its Irish holding company Riot Games Holding Ltd. So here is some interesting stuff for Riot. We can see the green is their overall revenue, the gray is their overall expenses, and then the purple is going to be that net result. I think there is an issue with this first graph, because obviously if the revenue was higher than the expenses, then the net result should be positive. But here in 2021, you can see the revenue and expenses increasing as we go on. Revenue is increasing, but also expenses are increasing, but not as fast. So overall, the net result and the profit has been increasing a little bit since 2020, 2021, 2022, 2023, whatever. But here the graph for the LEC looks the exact opposite. So the LEC, it seems like since 2020 has never been financially profitable, but you can see the expenses have been growing each of the past 4 years, while the profit or the revenue has actually been flat, if not decreasing. And then you see a big decrease in the revenues in 2023 and a huge increase in expenses, which is overall leading to a lot of money being lost in the LEC. And obviously, if this continues to get worse and worse over the next couple of years, this is at some point going to probably not make much financial sense. Over here, we're just losing a little bit of money or even a medium amount of money. It might be okay. It might be, Riot might be able to stomach that or whatever. But as things get worse and worse, at what point does Riot have to put a stop to things? And at what point do they have to start cutting back costs so much to where maybe the LEC becomes unrecognizable in a couple of years? Who knows what the different options and decisions are going to have to be made. At the close of 2023, Riot Games generated sales of 1.55 billion, up 12.5% from 2022. Despite heavy R&D spending, the company generated a net profit of 385 million, a comfortable margin of around 25%. It also paid out 228 in dividends to its holding company, bringing the total to over 600 million over 2 years. While strengthening its shareholders' equity to 762 million, the company's balance sheet remains solid, 1.82 billion in assets, including over 1 billion in intangible assets and 160 million in cash. Despite undeniable success, Tencent has since 2022 adopted a stricter strategy of cost control and optimization of its various subsidiaries in order to increase margins. The Chinese company has thus instructed Riot Games not only to remain financially successful, but also to justify its investment by obtaining concrete returns in the medium term, particularly particularly in esports. A show under pressure against a backdrop, the LEC, serving as a showcase for Riot's images and IP, found itself under increasing financial pressure. Production costs like broadcast, live events, salaries, logistics have remained high, while revenues remain limited to a few sources. You have league sponsorship deals, for which are generally declining and often below the guaranteed minimum. You have broadcasting rights deals, which are rare or non-existent. And you have merchandise sales, which are insufficient to cover league expenses. The LEC had a particularly bad 2023, seeing a sharp deterioration in performance. Sales fell by 63% and gross margin dropped into the negatives. Operating costs continue to rise, further deepening losses. As a result, the league's deficit worsened considerably, reaching $28.5 million in the negative, including $25 million in operating costs, salaries, infrastructure, etc. Since its inception, the LEC has reached a cumulative deficit of $53 million, absorbed almost entirely by the publisher. And I know it's going to lead a lot of people to question and wonder, like, at this point, why would Riot even continue to run all of these? Because again, the LEC is one of the more successful. I mean, if you look at something like what's going on in North America, that should just be an absolute mess, because the LEC has still remained relatively popular and growing, and people still enjoy tuning into this. The viewership is still pretty good. Obviously, the esports bubble has popped in a huge way, so I'm sure they're not getting as many big sponsorship offers and deals and the crazy VC money and everything that was coming in before. But if this continues to get worse and worse, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And why would Riot continue to foot this bill when there are production companies and tournament organizers and all this different stuff that would put on these things for them, or try to put it on or whatever, and also at the same time, it's just another instance in which franchising has kind of been a big just swing and miss for everybody. Hasn't necessarily worked out great for the players, hasn't necessarily worked out great for the teams, hasn't necessarily worked out great for Riot on the financial side. I don't know. I know there's a lot of people who would love to, go back to the old days of, like I said, tournament organizers, third parties, tournaments, leagues, all this different stuff, because we see that working out just fine in many other esports. So I don't know, pretty crazy. But the amount of money that's being lost here is insane. And Riot's a big company. Tencent's a huge company. They can absorb these things, but the question is, do they want to, and is it worth it to them? On the esports front, Riot has set up a subsidiary, Riot Broadcasting, dedicated to producing competitive broadcasts. In 2023, it generated only $16 million in sales. Those earnings came entirely from other Riot entities. Riot Broadcasting generates revenue by invoicing its services to the various organizations and leagues that require broadcasting and belong to Riot. In addition, the 9 direct employees of Riot Broadcasting cost the company $1.2 million a year. The LEC and esports in general isn't exactly a top performer on the Riot Games balance sheet, even if the deficit is near negligible in the context of the company's sale volume. $28.5 million deficit for the LEC out of $1.55 billion in sales. Riot is desperate to find savings and meet Tencent's expectations. The first step towards rationalizing costs was to cut the workforce. Riot cut 11% of its workforce at the beginning of 2024, around 530 positions, which was a very, very crazy time, obviously. This reduction, intended to simplify internal structures and cut costs, came despite the company's growing profitability. Though Riot Esports Ventures have seen near unparalleled results, at least in the context of space, the esports division was hit disproportionately hard by the layoffs. The LEC has also had to rethink its relationship with the franchise teams. It canceled $2 million of franchise fees originally spread out, confirmed by the devaluation of $20 million of a debt qualified as irrecoverable, and modified the minimum payment guaranteed to teams. The budget cuts have affected all stakeholders in the esports world, not just League of Legends, employees, clubs, and even spectators who are suffering from the drop in production quality. This is particularly true of the VCT EMEA, Valorant's regional elite, which has faced a number of technical problems in recent weeks stemming from budget issues. As Riot pushes esports towards financial stability at the behest of its parent company, the scene has become strained, struggling to survive. It's not clear how much longer the esports division can continue to run under these circumstances. Riot Games was contacted for comment prior to publication, but declined to respond. But interestingly enough, we did actually get a response on Twitter from Maximilian Peter Schmidt, the director of League of Legends Esports in Europe, and he said, "Hey folks, I appreciate your effort in trying to make the financials a little bit more transparent, but there are a few things in the article which are either missing context or straight up incorrect, which I wanted to take a second to clarify. Let me start by saying that looking at a singular entity in a complex corporate structure like Riot's can easily tell a misleading story if taken out of context. In this case, it has led to your data being incomplete and therefore wrong in the way it is presented. A few corrections on the depiction of Tencent. Tencent has never asked us for dividends, and we have never given them any. Tencent does not tell us how to operate our business, and we are not under pressure to make esports profitable. That is not at all how we approach it. And again, just being under pressure to make esports profitable does not mean they are not under some kind of pressure or anything to make it lose less money, and that doesn't mean they don't have any like guidelines or downside that they have to limit themselves to? Again, would Tencent just continue to let them lose any amount of money they possibly wanted? Like, I have my doubts about that. Who knows for sure? He goes on to say, we do not primarily look at esports as an advertisement vehicle, although it can be. Esports is a core part of our DNA, given the competitiveness of our games, and of course plays a huge role in making our games some of the most watched and played in the world. Lastly, and most importantly, esports has never been about short-term returns for us. It is about building fandom, creating an amazing fan experience, which esports is a critical part of, and giving players more ways to connect with the games we all love. So, again, I don't really understand what his statement is. He says 5 tweets that all in all really kind of say nothing about how the article is wrong or, clarifying anything for anyone like that. But I at least wanted to give you the statement, from a, employee over at Riot to see what they had to say about the situation as well. But like I said, from the outside, it definitely seems like the LEC is in a troubling position and needs to figure some things out. Obviously, it's not necessarily the end of the world right away. They have time to figure some of these things out. But obviously, yeah, the economics of esports have never really made sense on a bunch of different fronts, and now we see yet again that a major esport league, even one that's been pretty overall successful and popular like the LEC, is really, really, really struggling. How long can this continue? I don't know, but definitely for right now, things don't necessarily look great for the LEC, and we'll have to see how they're able to handle and play things out from here. But that's pretty much it for this video today, guys. Hopefully catch you in the next one. Of course, just want to mention real quick, everything that we do here at Sheep Esports is powered by Holy. These are great tasting energy drinks that also just so happen to be healthier than the competition. Make sure you guys go check out that first link in the description below today. You can use those discount codes SE5 and SE10 to get a nice little discount on your Holy purchase and help support us at the same time. Hopefully catch you guys in the next one. Until then, peace.